Hello, my dear sleepy listener. Tonight, you will drift gently into a time of porcelain moons, ink-stained sleeves, and rivers that whispered beneath jade bridges. The air is still and warm, touched with the scent of lacquered wood and pine. You're not in the present anymore. You're lying beneath the sloping roof of a quiet scholar's house, somewhere in the heart of old Kaifeng. It is the year 960 CE, and something new has just begun. Before you drift away into peaceful slumber, please take a moment to like this video, leave a gentle comment about your favourite historical moment, and subscribe to keep these soothing tales coming your way. Let us know where you're listening from and what time your clock reads as the Song Dynasty awakens. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let these gentle whispers of history lull you into sleep. You awaken before dawn in Kaifeng, just as the first brush of pale blue light softens the tiled eaves. Birds are just beginning to stir, woodpeckers tapping against tree bark, doves cooing in the rafters. Somewhere not far away, a steady beat of hooves carries the rhythm of history. Zhao Kuangyin, once a general under the later Zhou Dynasty, has taken the mandate of heaven into his own hands. Legend says his soldiers lifted him onto a yellow robe by surprise, though some suspect the surprise was carefully arranged. Either way, the new emperor does not look like a conqueror this morning. He kneels to heaven, burning incense to ancestors and holding court not with rage, but with rice wine and reason. You can almost hear the hush in the streets. No war cries, no distant fires. Only the quiet clink of coins as market vendors begin their day with a hopeful sigh. There will be peace. The people whisper. A new dynasty has begun. The Song Dynasty. Zhao Kuangyin, now Emperor Taizu of Song, chooses not to sweep across the land with fire and spear, but with scroll and seal. His most decisive act is to curtail military independence. Generals are offered posts of honour, but gently moved away from the heart of decision-making. You see it unfold slowly, like tea leaves unfurling in warm water, and you are there. Not as a noble or a soldier, but as a quiet observer, perhaps a junior scribe, your sleeves too long, your brush a little clumsy. You copy decrees in a warm-lit hall while oil lamps flicker overhead. The ink smells of pine soot. The paper has a faint crispness to it, Song paper. They'll one day call it. Outside, the capital is shifting. Kaifeng, already one of the world's most populous cities, begins its transformation into a hive of civil order. No fortresses rise, but granaries do. Markets stretch across canals. Tax offices blossom like bureaucratic flowers. One day, Emperor Taizu gathers his ministers in an early morning assembly, pale light catching the gold thread in their robes. He orders the gradual expansion of the civil service exam system. You copy the edict by hand, noticing the careful choice of words: integrity, clarity, service, not a sword in sight. This is how an empire begins, not in fire, but in parchment and ink. You pass an old storyteller in the tea house who winks at you as he recounts how Zhao's horse refused to cross a particular river on the night of his fateful rebellion. Heaven's way, the old man mutters with a knowing smile. You're not sure if he believes it, but it's a fine story to sip tea to. And here, in this early season of the dynasty, the scholarly life begins to bloom alongside policy. Your neighbour, a bright-eyed girl with dreams of statecraft, writes essays late into the night, hoping one day to sit for the civil service exam. You trade poems across your courtyard wall. Hers are always better, yet even now, a whisper of uncertainty lingers. Historians still wonder just how spontaneous that fateful yellow robe moment truly was. Was Zhao Kuangyin truly compelled by loyal troops, or was it theatre, carefully staged for the mandate of heaven? The truth, like mist over the yellow river, remains elusive. But here, in your present, none of that matters. The sky is full of slow-moving clouds. Bells ring softly across the capital. The Song Dynasty begins not with battle cries, but with the rustle of paper, the hush of classrooms, and the scent of morning tea. And as you close your eyes again, the city exhales beneath you. The first chapter of China's great Renaissance has quietly turned. You wake again to the sound of birdsong and the rustling of silk sleeves brushing past lattice windows. Morning light seeps through carved screens, casting shadows shaped like clouds and cranes. The household is already stirring. Someone is grinding ink. Someone else is boiling water for tea. You stretch quietly, listening to the soft gurgle of water as it's poured into a clay pot. It is now the early years of the Song Dynasty, and you've taken residence in the home of a scholar official, just beyond the city's inner gate. The household is not grand, but precise. Calligraphy scrolls hang on every wall. The scent of camphor wood and oolong leaves drifts through the air like a gentle lullaby. Today is an examination day. Civil service exams, the great gateway into the Song bureaucracy, are underway across the empire. You step quietly into the main hall, watching as your host dons his scholar's robes with practiced calm. He has spent years preparing memorizing Confucian texts, composing elegant moral arguments, and debating the fine points of ritual etiquette. These exams are no small matter. They stretch for days, sometimes weeks, and require not just intellect but endurance. Candidates often bring food, bedding, and writing materials into examination compounds, locking themselves away in small cubicles where they craft essays by candlelight. Some collapse from exhaustion. Some leave with poems inked in trembling hands. You wander through a quiet pavilion where aspiring scholars practice reciting the analects, their voices soft and earnest. A plum tree sheds its blossoms into the pond, and the petals float like forgotten thoughts. The Song emperors, beginning with Taizu, make the exams more accessible than ever before, expanding both eligibility and curriculum. It is not bloodline, but brilliance that grants entrance to the bureaucracy. This single change reshapes the empire. From commoner to chancellor, one might rise. There's a joke passed between candidates, told in whispered tone before the proctors arrive. If I fail, I shall sell tea. If I pass, I shall tax it. You chuckle softly. Even ambition here is politely phrased. And yet, there is a soft melancholy that clings to those who study endlessly, only to fail by a hair's breadth. In one corner of the courtyard, a young man kneels before an ancestor shrine, reciting prayers with red-rimmed eyes. He has sat for the exams 3 times. His father passed on the 4th. You pass him a scroll of your favourite verse poem by Ouyang Xiu, who once failed but rose to become one of the empire's most beloved scholars. The young man smiles faintly. It is enough for now. Not all is serious, though. There's a lesser-known pastime among candidates inkstone carving. Between study sessions, they shape their own inkstones, grinding platforms made from slate or ceramic into elegant forms, dragons, lotus blossoms, even small landscapes. Some say the shape of the inkstone influences the flow of thought. Yours is shaped like a sleeping tiger, curled and still. Historians still debate how much social mobility the exam system truly allowed. Some argue that powerful families still held sway, quietly grooming their sons with expensive tutors and rare commentaries. Others point to countless records of humble clerks rising through sheer determination. The truth, as always, sits somewhere in the middle, etched in both sweat and scrolls. You follow your scholar host through winding corridors toward the examination hall, not as a candidate yourself, but as a quiet observer, holding his ink and warming tea between sessions. Outside, the world hums with the rhythm of civility. No battles, no sieges, only argument, analysis, and aching wrists. A paper lantern swings gently above the entrance to the examination hall. It bears a single word, written in fine brushstrokes: Jing, quiet. And indeed, everything here is quiet. The scratching of brushes, the soft sighs of concentration, the rustle of silk robes. This is how governance is shaped in Song China, not with trumpets or swords, but with scholars seated cross-legged, chasing clarity through characters. The Song Dynasty trusts its poets more than its generals. You take a sip of tea and rest your eyes. The ink dries slowly, the day is warm, and civil order, it seems, begins with a poem. The scent of lacquered wood and warm sesame oil drifts through the morning mist as you step beyond the garden gate and into the winding arteries of the Kaifeng marketplace. It's early still, but already the city hums with gentle movement. Porters shuffle beneath crates, tailors unfurl bolts of embroidered silk, and street performers tune stringed instruments beneath awnings of faded red cloth. Today is not a day of exams or policies. Today, you wander. You slip quietly into the crowd, unnoticed, like a single reed in a river of silken sleeves. The stalls stretch on endlessly, their goods neatly arrayed on low wooden platforms. You pass a merchant unwrapping a freshly glazed porcelain bowl, blue swirls gleaming like waves around the rim. Song porcelain light as breath, delicate as eggshell, is famed across the known world, from Korea to Egypt. You pause. The merchant, a jovial man with cheeks like steamed buns, offers you a peek at his finest piece, a teacup so thin the light passes through it. You hold it up, watching a small chrysanthemum bloom inside the glaze, trapped like a memory in glass. In this moment, the Song Dynasty feels alive, not in palaces or scrolls, but in the hands of artisans and sellers. You pass a stall of dyed fans, their bamboo ribs carved with haiku about autumn wind. Another stall sells paper puppets, folk heroes, demons, and dancing cranes strung together with horsehair thread. A puppet maker winks and offers to make one in your likeness, though you're not sure what that would look like. There's a poem inked beside his stand. The fan opens wide, swatting flies and philosophy. In equal measure, you wander on. At a street corner, a group of travelling poets debate aloud in front of a modest wine stall. They sip millet wine from lacquer cups and argue about the correct metaphor for longing. One insists that longing is a crane flying home in fog. Another says it's a silk sash too long for the waist it once knew. A third poet, slumped and smiling, mutters, "Longing is more wine. Please." This gentle nonsense is encouraged. The song elite admire wordplay and literary cleverness. Even local officials sometimes compose poems to settle property disputes or critique municipal plumbing with grace and rhyme. You duck into a side alley where calligraphy scrolls hang from every doorway. One in particular stops you. It's a poem about peach blossoms, written in such small script it seems to hover like mist. The calligrapher, an elderly woman with silver in her hair, notices your stare. "I once wrote the whole Dao De Jing on a cicada's wing," she says. Eyes twinkling, you can't tell if she's joking. The human rhythms here are mesmerizing. A dumpling vendor bickers with a firewood seller. A little boy drops a string of coins into the river for luck. A cat curls around a fishmonger's ankles, patient and well fed. It's easy to forget this world was shaped by empire, and yet this market is only possible because of political stability, standardized currency, a reliable postal system, and a carefully managed canal network, all fostered under the Song. Still, the empire's greatest achievements are often unnoticed by those living within them. You stop to admire a street mural depicting an enormous lotus pond. Two ducks waddle past you, entirely uninterested in art. Scholars still debate how urban Song China truly was. Kaifeng, they say, might have been the first city in history to surpass 1 million residents. Yet many people farmers, artisans, and boatmen lived lives closer to nature than marble. Was it really a golden age, or simply a well-lit hallway between dynasties? The question drifts through academic halls like the faint echo of a distant flute. You turn one last corner before heading home, and suddenly the street opens to the riverfront. The Bian River glimmers beneath arched stone bridges, with ferries drifting lazily like painted brushstrokes across the water. Nearby, a travelling merchant ties down a stack of sealed crates marked for Hangzhou inside. Perhaps tea leaves, ink stones, or one of those whisper-thin porcelain cups. You pause for a moment, watching a group of children float paper boats in a rain barrel. One child folds a small piece of rice paper and scrawls a single word upon it, hope for setting it to sail. And just like that, the breeze picks up, the boats drift, and the morning market recedes into the hush of late morning light. You stir from your slumber to the gentle knock of a wooden tablet against a gate post, a polite morning summons from the neighbourhood clerk. His sleeves are crisp, his hair tied neatly with a woven jade pin, and his satchel bulges with scrolls, maps, and one particularly soggy tax receipt. You rise and follow him, past the courtyard garden where dew glistens on peony leaves, through narrow lanes, humming with broom sweepers and rooster calls. The sun is not yet high. Today, you're shadowing a bureaucrat, not a mighty minister or famed scholar, but one of the many quiet scribes who keep the Song Empire humming like a tea kettle. The clerk's name is Shen. He works in the Ministry of Revenue, though his true passion, you learn, is in drawing exceptionally precise city maps. He claims he once spent 3 weeks redrawing the fishmonger's district because a single alley was mislabeled by half a pace. You believe him. Song bureaucracy is legendary for its detail. With over 1,000 official titles spread across central and regional branches, it rivals even modern institutions in complexity. Civilian officials far outnumber military ones, an intentional design begun by Emperor Taizu himself to keep the empire balanced more by law than by lance. Shen hands you a slim register bound in twine. Today's task is to visit 5 bakeries and verify their grain allocations. It may sound dull, but he assures you the bunmen are notorious for hiding sesame stalks. You nod solemnly. Your first stop is a cheerful shop painted sky blue. The baker greets Shen like an old friend, and the two fall into an oddly poetic argument about rising flour costs and municipal oven inspections. You sip tea politely and admire the receipts, each one stamped with the red seal of the grain office and countersigned in 3 places. And yet, the most fascinating part isn't the buns or the stamps, it's the notebook Shen carries. In it are miniature drawings of alleyways, rooftop slopes, and the exact placement of street altars. It's a personal cartography project. Shen's dream of mapping Kaifeng down to every courtyard, cat and corner lantern. No one reads these, he murmurs as you walk. But someday, someone might. You pass through a quiet square where schoolboys recite aloud from the classic of filial piety. A teacher watches sleepily from beneath a willow. Shen pauses to correct one boy's pronunciation gently, without judgment. Bureaucrats, you begin to understand, are not mere functionaries. They are stewards of order, educators, record keepers, and occasionally dreamers with a taste for ink and topography. At the next bakery, a minor kerfuffle unfolds. The baker insists his grain delivery was short by 10 catties. Shen raises an eyebrow and produces a tiny brass scale from his sleeve. Within minutes, he's weighed the reserves, recalculated based on humidity loss, and adjusted the ledger. No fine, he says with a soft smile, but next time, dry your rice sacks properly. The baker bows, chastened and grateful. As you walk on, you ask Shen what he truly loves about his job. He considers for a moment, then says that I never need to raise my voice to change the world. You pass through the city archives, a cool, dim building lined with bamboo shelves and scroll bundles. Clerks in hemp robes flit about like bees in a hive. Shen hands off his morning notes to a sleepy archivist who seals them with wax and a slow yawn. Somewhere in this endless paper maze are tax records dating back generations, recipes for standardized ink, rainfall reports, and a scandalous poem about a court eunuch and a pigeon. That last one, Shen assures you, is catalogued under miscellanea. Historians still debate whether Song bureaucracy was too large, its own weight dragging on imperial agility. Some claim its love of process over action doomed it in wartime. Others see it as a flowering of early administrative genius, a civil model centuries ahead of its time. The truth may depend on whether you were the one writing the edicts or standing in line to submit your grain report. Shen waves you goodbye at dusk beneath a vermilion gate carved with cloud patterns. Come again, he says, if you want to see the city lanterns mapped by brightness and colour. You smile. You will. The sun sets slowly over Kaifeng. Lanterns bloom like stars across the boulevards, and in a quiet office somewhere, a man named Shen opens a fresh scroll and begins drawing rooftops by moonlight. You awaken beside a scroll. It lies half unrolled on the floor of a shaded veranda, ink still damp, a faint scent of pine soot lingering in the air. Outside, cicadas sing in the tall grass, and the river murmurs just beyond the garden wall. You blink slowly, eyes adjusting to soft daylight as a breeze ruffles the scroll's edge. There it is again, that astonishing image. Boats bobbing beneath arched bridges. Hawkers, barbers, scholars, fishmongers, sedan chair porters, even a man leading a stubborn mule. The entire city of Bianjing is captured not in formal court style, but in glorious, teeming motion. You're sitting in the studio of Zhang Zeduan, the painter behind the legendary Along the River during the Qingming festival, and today you'll watch him work. Zhang is not what you expect. No grand robes or lofty airs. just a quiet man with ink-stained fingers and a habit of muttering to himself about roof angles and shadow length. His assistants prepare fresh brushes, some made from rabbit fur, others from wolf, while Zhang dips a brush tip into deep black ink and continues rendering a boatman's squint. The studio is quiet, save for the tapping of a brush handle and the occasional sneeze from the young apprentice who grinds ink in the corner. Outside, laundry flaps on bamboo poles. Inside, history is taking shape, one careful stroke at a time. You lean over the scroll, fascinated by the painter's choices. He doesn't depict emperors or gods. He paints bakers and ferry drivers, not the grand capital, but its daily rhythm. A bridge so crowded it bends with weight. A tavern with customers peeking through the slats. A street corner where a boy chases a chicken. It's not perfect order, it's life. And yet, there's elegance in the chaos. Zhang explains softly that the scroll is read from right to left, as if walking through the city. Like a journey in time, he says, eyes fixed on a figure selling noodles. You nod, entranced. Outside the studio, life mirrors art. You step into the streets for a break and find the same scenes playing out: barbers shaving heads under umbrellas, cobblers tapping soles onto shoes, a woman chasing her daughter with a hairpin in hand. For a moment, you wonder if you are inside the scroll, or if the scroll is simply real life with its breath held. A merchant passes you, carrying a load of paintings on silk. Landscape scrolls for the refined soul, he announces. You peek inside one mountains, pine trees, a scholar contemplating a waterfall. Beautiful, but removed. In contrast, Zhang's work is utterly here. Historians marvel at how along the river during the Qingming festival blends artistic tradition with a documentary eye. Was Zhang capturing a real day in Bianjing or idealizing urban life in the northern Song? Some scholars think it was meant as a celebration of the Qingming festival itself, when families clean ancestral tombs. Others believe it was quietly critical, showing the widening gap between rich and poor. Zhang never says. He simply paints. Later that evening, you return to the studio. Candles flicker, their glow catching on the glossy surface of the scroll. Zhang is working on a shopfront now, a tiny row of herbal jars behind wooden bars. You recognize a medicine seller you passed earlier, who winked and offered to sell you ginseng guaranteed to outlive the dynasty. You didn't buy it, but here he is, preserved forever. Zhang leans back, setting down his brush. What do you think he asks? You want to say 1,000 things, but all that comes out is it feels alive. He smiles. Then it's nearly done. As you leave the studio, the moon has risen over Bianjing. Paper lanterns sway along the canals, reflecting in ripples like lines of poetry. Somewhere in the night, a song echoes from a tea house, soft and mournful. You pause on the bridge, just as in the painting, and for a fleeting moment, you are both within the scroll and watching it unfold, suspended between art and memory. You wake to temple bells, low. Slow tones hum through the morning fog, pulsing gently through the tiled roofs and whispering bamboo groves of Bianjing's outskirts. You rise from a wooden cot in a quiet monastic guest house, your blanket still heavy with the scent of incense and cedar. Today, you're staying in the shadow of a pagoda. It is taller than most towers you've seen, with 7 octagonal tiers of brick and glazed tile rising like a staircase to the heavens. The Song Dynasty has embraced brick and stone pagodas in place of earlier wooden ones, which were beautiful but prone to fire. This one, you are told, has stood through 3 emperors and 6 minor earthquakes. The monks here wear brown robes and walk with silent, practiced steps, their sandals barely whispering against stone. You follow them to the courtyard for morning meditation. As you sit beneath a ginkgo tree, you glance up through the mist and see the pagoda glowing faintly golden in the early light. It feels still here but not frozen. The Song era is one of subtle transformations, and Buddhism, though no longer state-sponsored, still finds quiet places to thrive. Monasteries remain active hubs of learning, healing, and social support. Some run free clinics. Others teach calligraphy to orphan boys or offer tea to weary travellers. In the monastery's scriptorium, you observe a monk carefully copying sutras onto thin rice paper, each stroke a form of prayer. Next to him, a younger novice experiments with coloured ink, illuminating a lotus blossom in pale blues and pinks. You wonder if this soft creativity is permitted, but the elder simply nods approvingly. Art, like devotion, takes many forms. Later, you explore the base of the pagoda itself, tracing the carved stone lions that guard its entrance. Their expressions are almost comical, more like sleepy cats than fierce protectors. Early song. A nearby monk chuckles. They carved with humour back then. Inside, the air is cool and sweet. Spiral incense burns in the rafters, leaving long, quiet trails in the air like silk threads drifting in slow motion. You climb the narrow staircase upward, each step slightly worn from generations of pilgrims. From a small window halfway up, you glimpse a lotus pond in the distance, the petals trembling in the breeze. At the very top, wind whistles through the open arches. The view stretches wide, rice paddies to the south, temples and markets to the north, and a cluster of scholars reciting poetry in a nearby garden pavilion. It's hard to say whether this is a religious space or simply a beautiful one. Buddhism in the Song era is complex. While it no longer holds official court favour as it did during the Tang, it endures in the daily rhythms of the people. Ordinary citizens pray to Guanyin for safe childbirth, light lamps for deceased ancestors, and hang tiny paper prayers in groves for passing monks to bless. And some emperors like Emperor Zhenzong still seek Buddhist relics and participate in rituals, even as Confucian philosophy increasingly dominates court thinking. Scholars continue to debate whether Buddhism's decline in prestige was spiritual, political, or simply an ebb in historical rhythm. What's clear is that the people never let go of their pagodas, their sutras, or their small daily devotions. Back in the monastery kitchen, you help stir a pot of red bean porridge for the morning meal. One monk hums an old folk tune while peeling ginger. Another pours tea with the steady grace of someone who has done this 1,000 times. You feel no rush here, no deadlines, just the slow, circular flow of time. As the day fades, a group of local children arrive with their parents. It is a festival day, small but meaningful, and the monks host them with quiet smiles. Lanterns are lit. A bell rings 7 times for the 7 tiers of the pagoda. The children giggle as they circle the tower 3 times, each pass said to bring a year of wisdom. You sit by the pond after dark, listening to frogs and watching the candlelight reflections ripple across the water. A nearby monk places a lantern beside you and says, "Make a wish if you like, or don't. It'll still flicker." And so you watch the lantern drift out across the pond, silent, golden, patient, like the Song Dynasty itself. It floats calmly between faith and reason. ritual and change, always glowing softly in the dark. The air smells of ink and wood shavings. You stir from a nap beneath a paper screen to the rhythmic thump-thump of carving tools. Somewhere nearby, a brush scrapes across wood, followed by a gentle puff of sawdust. Morning light filters in through a lattice window, illuminating a bench scattered with narrow wooden blocks, shallow bowls of black ink, and scrolls laid out to dry like tea leaves in the sun. You are in a woodblock printing workshop, and today you will help make books. The Song Dynasty is quietly undergoing one of history's great revolutions, one made not with war or gold, but with words on paper. Printing, once a delicate craft reserved for Buddhist sutras or imperial edicts, has become faster, cheaper, and dare one say democratic. In this small shop on a back lane in Hangzhou, you watch artisans prepare pages of a Confucian text for a local school. First, the manuscript is copied in elegant, calligraphic hand by a brush master. Then, the layout is transferred in reverse onto thin sheets, which are pasted to smooth wood blocks. A carver follows the lines carefully, removing negative space with remarkable precision until only the raised characters remain. You're given a practice block, a proverb about honesty and a blunt tool. Your carving is less than precise. The apprentice watching you giggles quietly. You both agree your attempt could be labelled abstract. The master printer demonstrates the full process. Ink is brushed evenly onto the block, paper pressed down with a padded hand tool, and voila, a perfect page. The characters are clear, the alignment exact. No smudging, no blur, just crisp, black wisdom on creamy paper. What once took months to copy by hand can now be produced in dozens or hundreds of copies a day. Your host, a book dealer named Yao, invites you to browse his modest collection. You find volumes of medical diagrams, maps of river routes, agricultural manuals, poetry anthologies, and even a printed joke book, its illustrations full of mischievous animals and overworked scholars. Popular with exam candidates, Yao notes with a wink. In the Song Dynasty, printing is not just a scholarly tool, it is a market. Booksellers set up stalls in urban streets. Private homes house mini-libraries. Children read rhyming primers while their parents argue over competing editions of history texts. For the first time in Chinese history, even the middle classes can access knowledge at scale. And it's not only China. Printed songbooks travel via trade routes to Korea, Japan, and even as far west as the Islamic world, where some scholars admire the delicate wood-block technique. Buddhist monks carry sutras across borders. One wonders how many distant lands first glimpsed Chinese philosophy through a page printed right here, in this small, fragrant workshop. There is debate, of course. Some scholars question whether mass printing dilutes the quality of knowledge, if the printed word loses the reverence once given to hand-copied scrolls. Others see it as a flowering of public learning. Was it too soon or perfectly timed? Historians still discuss whether this explosion of accessible text contributed to the dynasty's strength or to its eventual vulnerability. You decide not to worry about that today. Yao shares a pot of plum tea as the apprentices clean their brushes. One boy reads aloud from a newly printed novel, a story of a wandering swordsman who defeats corrupt officials with both blade and wit. A small crowd gathers. Even the shop cat seems intrigued. The sun dips lower, and finished pages are hung from lines across the workshop to dry. They flutter in the breeze like tiny sails. You walk between them carefully, reading stray lines as you pass, one about kindness, another about tide patterns. It's as if the air is filled with knowledge, wafting softly from every corner. At the door, Yao offers you a parting gift, a slim book of song poetry, bound in silk thread and smelling faintly of ink and pine. To read when you can't sleep, he says. You thank him with a bow and step out into the quiet lane. Above, the sky has turned violet. Lanterns begin to glow in the windows, and behind you, the printing shop continues its quiet work, carving thought into wood, pressing time into paper one page at a time. Water drips with precision. Plink, plink, plink. You awaken beneath the polished bronze arm of a great astronomical clock tower, the morning air cool and metallic. You're in Kaifeng once more, but in a very different quarter of the city, the observatory. The air hums with a faint tension, as though time itself is holding its breath. Here, engineers and astronomers pace quietly across polished stone floors, their robes tucked up to avoid getting caught in gears. Above them looms the great water-powered armillary clock tower designed by Susonga marvel of engineering, towering 5 stories high, ticking with a harmony of chains, wheels, and water scoops. You follow an assistant named Lin, who offers you a mild smile and a safety warning. Stay clear of the dragon's lever. You nod solemnly, as if you know what that means. The clock tower isn't like any modern clock you know. There's no ticking hand or bell chime. Instead, it tells time through a sequence of wooden figures, mechanical dolls emerging from hidden panels every hour to strike drums, ring gongs, or release incense smoke in synchronized ceremony. Dragons and phoenixes serve as couriers of time, crossing miniature balconies with grace. It feels more like a performance than a mechanism, and yet it is rigorously precise. The heart of the machine is a water escapement, a device that allows water to flow in controlled pulses, regulating the movement of the gears. Lin explains it's one of the earliest such devices in the world, a brilliant combination of hydraulic engineering and cosmology. Time, he says, must flow like water, never too fast, never too slow. Inside the adjoining hall, you're shown the star maps that accompany the tower. Dozens of constellations are charted in exquisite detail, mapped not only for beauty, but for imperial duty. The emperor must know the heavens' moods. Eclipses are warnings, comets, sometimes omens. Susong himself was more than an inventor. He was a polymath, a statesman, a doctor, and a philosopher. He believed in the harmony between heaven and human governance. If the clock ticked true, perhaps the empire would too. But the truth, Lin confesses, is more complicated. The original clock tower, completed in the early 11th century, was later dismantled by the invading Jurchen Jin when Kaifeng fell. Some say it was never rebuilt to its former glory. Others argue pieces of the technology spread quietly through later dynasties, hiding in temple gongs or courtly fountains. There is scholarly debate to this day about how much of Susong's mechanism was ever truly replicated. You stand at the base of the tower, looking up at the turning wheels and wooden figurines emerging like polite spirits. The scent of wet copper and inkstone fills the air. Outside the observatory, the city continues with its usual rhythms, fishmongers yelling, tailors bargaining, street sweepers chasing petals. But in here, time behaves differently. It's orderly, orchestrated, nearly sacred. Later, in the observatory garden, you sit with a young apprentice beneath a plum tree. She shows you her notebook filled, not with equations, but delicate sketches of the stars. "I want to make a clock that sings," she says quietly. You tell her she already has. As dusk falls, you help light lanterns shaped like moon phases. They are hung along the outer rail of the tower, casting long shadows over the courtyard. With each passing hour, another figure emerges from the clock's chamber, a scholar with a scroll, a monk with a bell, a child releasing a bird carved from sandalwood. And in that moment, you realize the Song Dynasty doesn't just measure time, it shapes it. Through ink, through gears, through the steady heartbeat of water. As the sky darkens, the tower glows gold, and the stars above slowly slide into place. You wake to the sound of creaking timber and gulls. Salt wind brushes your face as you open your eyes beneath the curved sail of a song trade junk. The deck sways gently beneath you, and the sails above bloom like clouds stitched from canvas and rope. Around you, sailors speak in a half-dozen dialects, joking, singing, barking orders, all without ever quite raising their voices. You are at sea, and this, you realize, is the floating edge of the empire, the Song Dynasty, landlocked by powerful neighbours in the north, has turned its eyes southward and outward to rivers, coastlines, and oceans. And what you're standing on is the result one of the most advanced maritime trade vessels in the world. The ship's design is clever. A flat bottom for river navigation, a deep hold for overseas cargo, and multiple watertight compartments, an innovation that sailors elsewhere won't adopt for centuries. These junks can weather storms, carry silk and porcelain to India and beyond, and return heavy with spices, ivory, coral, pearls, and stories. You watch as the crew inspects their cargo bolts of silk bound with red twine, tea bricks stamped with merchant seals, and boxes of lacquered fans padded with rice straw. One crate contains porcelain teacups, each resting in its own carved wooden niche like an honoured guest. Below deck, you're invited to share a meal of pickled vegetables, dried fish, and steamed millet. It's humble but filling. The cook jokes that it tastes better at sea when everything else is moving and your stomach is uncertain. Your ship is bound for a port in Champa modern-day Vietnam, part of the vast maritime network the Song Dynasty maintains across Southeast Asia, South Asia, and as far west as the Arabian Peninsula. From Guangzhou to Calicut, Song ships arrive bearing not just goods, but influence. The harbours buzz with multilingual markets, temples that mix Chinese, Tamil, and Arab architecture, and inns where merchants trade gossip alongside wares. One account, you hear, even mentions Song pottery found in East Africa. Another speaks of Chinese coins washing up on Persian shores. Is it exaggeration, perhaps? But porcelain rarely floats alone. As your junk sails southward, the wind stiffens. The captain, a woman named Jia. Her hair braided with turquoise thread, orders the crew to tighten the rigging. She explains that monsoon timing is crucial. Too early, she says, and the sea sulks. Too late, and it throws a tantrum. You spot a compass in her cabin, an elegant needle floating on water within a lacquered case. These early magnetic compasses, used aboard song ships, represent one of the most quietly revolutionary tools in world history. No longer do traders rely solely on stars and shoreline. The world, slowly, begins to curve into charts and calculations. Some scholars debate whether the Song truly dominated maritime trade, or if much of their reach relied on intermediaries and local brokers. But standing here, as the sails snap and sea spray dampens your robe, you feel the truth doesn't need exaggeration. These songs were present often quietly, always curiously across the sea. Night falls, lanterns swing from the masts, casting warm pools of light onto the darkened waves. One sailor begins to sing, a low, lilting tune about home and lost socks and tea that never taste the same abroad. You smile. Some themes, it seems, are eternal. You sleep again on the gently rolling deck, stars peeking through sails above. Somewhere out there, ports flicker with torchlight, markets prepare for arrival, stories wait to be exchanged, and the Song Dynasty, quiet and salt-stained, sails patiently toward them. You wake beneath pine branches. Their needles whisper above you, stirred by a breeze that carries the scent of ink, tea leaves, and distant mountains. You are seated in a small pavilion, its pillars aged to a soft grey, its tiled roof gently bowed under years of rain and thought. Before you sits a low wooden table, 2 clay cups, and a man with a long, composed face and robes like gently falling paper. Zhu Xi, philosopher, teacher, ritualist. The man who will take the scattered threads of Confucian tradition and reweave them into something sharper, deeper, more enduring. You pour tea as he speaks, his voice calm and unhurried. He's not here to lecture, but to share. Around him, students kneel quietly on reed mats, their scrolls open, brushes poised. A few have nodded off. One is sketching a squirrel. Zhu Xi does not mind. He is patient. He begins, as always, with questions. What is the nature of virtue? Can one know truth through reason alone? What, exactly, is the purpose of a teacup? You look at your cup. It's plain, brown, unglazed. It holds tea. Yes, but is that its nature or merely its function? Zhu Xi smiles. Li, he says softly, principle. He speaks of Li, the inner order of all things. The grain in wood, the movement of stars, the loyalty between siblings, even the quiet angle of a mountain stream. To understand Li is to understand the world, not just by study, but through self-cultivation, ritual, and reflection. This is the essence of what will later be called Neo-Confucianism, a philosophy that merges the moral clarity of Confucius with metaphysics, mindfulness, and an almost meditative reverence for natural harmony. You walk with him through a pine grove as he explains. He stops beside a stone basin where water drips slowly from a bamboo spout. This is how virtue is formed. He murmurs, drop by drop. His students follow in silence. Some are bright-eyed, scribbling furiously. Others look overwhelmed, their robes wrinkled, ink smudged across their sleeves. Zhu Xi gently corrects one student's character for benevolence, then offers a peach. No one thinks well on an empty stomach, he says. You sit with him again beneath the pavilion. The wind has shifted. He speaks now of ritual, not empty ceremony, but the deliberate mindful acts that shape the soul. Lighting incense not just to please the spirits, but to remind the self of quiet intention. Bowing not just to ancestors, but to memory, to gratitude. Even family dinners, he says, are rituals when done with heart. Historians debate the extent to which Zhu Xi's influence was felt during his lifetime. His teachings, initially resisted by some court scholars, would become standard reading centuries later, etched into the civil service exam canon by the Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties. But in his own time, his critics found him rigid, even fussy. Still, his philosophy resonates here. Now, beneath the shade of pine and the hush of distant wind chimes, there is a quiet gravity to his presence, a stillness that draws thought like a lake draws moonlight. At dusk, a student recites a poem about autumn leaves. Juicy nods and replies with a verse of his own, one that compares a drifting leaf to the search for virtue. It falls not by chance, but with quiet cause, as the mountain stirs and the wind gives pause. You smile. Poetry, tea, and moral inquiry, all in one conversation. It feels very Song Dynasty. Before you leave, Jushi hands you a scroll. Don't memorize it, he says. Live it. You bow and return to your guest room beside the grove. The sky outside deepens to indigo, and the pine trees begin to sigh again. You light a single candle. You pour one last cup of tea, and you wonder, gently, sleepily, what Lee might look like in your own thoughts, your own movements, your own dreams. You wake in the mist. A gentle fog clings to the hilltops as dawn slips over the countryside near Huizhou. Somewhere nearby, a rooster calls, not urgently, just as a matter of habit, and the faint gurgle of a mountain spring trickles beside your window. You are staying in a scholar's retreat. The home is modest but deeply refined, carved wooden beams, scrolls of poetry pinned to the walls, a low brazier with a single simmering kettle. Outside, bamboo groves whisper, and terraces of tea bushes step down the slope like green ink strokes on paper. This is a space for reflection, and your host, an aging scholar with a soft cough and an impeccable inkstone collection, has spent the past decade here writing essays, painting landscapes, and waiting for visitors who rarely come. You are to his delight, a rare audience. Here, he says gently, offering you a brush and a fresh page. Paint with the water first, then let the ink follow. You try, and your mountain looks more like a dumpling, but he smiles nonetheless. Even dumplings have weight. The Song Dynasty reveres the scholar-artist. These are not separate disciplines: literature, calligraphy, painting, even garden design. They're branches of the same tree. Harmony is the trunk. To write a poem is to train one's moral sense. To paint a bamboo stalk is to understand balance and emptiness. Here in the hills, a quiet revolution in aesthetics is taking place. The art of the song has turned inward, not toward grand court murals or public monuments, but toward intimacy. Scroll paintings show not rulers or battles, but a solitary fisherman in fog, a scholar crossing a bridge, a gnarled pine defying the snow. Your host unrolls a new scroll. It's his own a misty landscape with a tiny figure gazing out over a river bend. This is my neighbour, he says. He borrowed my hat once and never returned it, so I made him immortal. You laugh softly. The story is true, or perhaps not. Either way, it's wonderfully human. He prepares tea while you write. Your brushwork is hesitant, but your words begin to flow. Something about the cool air, the distant flute music drifting up from the valley, the faint aroma of cassia bark from the stove. It all makes writing feel efforts. Your poem is short and not terribly elegant. It reads, "The mountain moves not, yet clouds bow to it. My thoughts return, like birds who forgot why they left." Your host claps once. "Keep that," he says. "It's honest." Later, you walk together along a mossy path to a scholar's grave, one who died without rank or fame, but whose inkstone carvings are now prized among collectors. He made one shaped like a moon in a bowl, your host says. Ridiculous, but people weep when they see it. Historians still puzzle over this era's artistic quietude. Why such softness during a time of political anxiety and growing military pressure from the north? Some say it was escapism. Others argue it was the essence of strength resistance through refinement. Here in the hills, no one is debating, they are writing, painting, brewing tea with water drawn from streams believed to echo differently in the presence of sincerity. Whether true or not, the belief makes every cup taste sweeter. You pause at a bend in the trail to look out across the valley. Terraced fields gleam in the mist. Somewhere, a child's kite tugs at the sky like a forgotten idea. The clouds shift softly, like breath. When you return to the study, your host has already begun carving a new inkstone. This one is shaped like a sleeping goose. Why a goose, you ask? He shrugs, because ducks are too eager. That night, you fall asleep beneath scrolls of your own attempt at landscape painting. They are uneven, charming, and utterly yours. Outside, the wind moves softly through the bamboo, and within, your dreams settle in quiet, like calligraphy drying in morning air. You awaken to chirping, not birds, though they've had their turn. No, this sound is more musical, sharper, almost mischievous. As your eyes open, you realize it's coming from a carved sandalwood box beside your bed. Inside, nestled in soft straw, a small cricket leaps and sings, its wings vibrating like the strings of a miniature lute. You are in a palace now. Not the stone austerity of the Tang, nor the opulent spectacle of future dynasties, but a Song imperial residence refined, airy, quietly luminous. Here, corridors flow into gardens, walls give way to latticework, and moon gates open into fragrant courtyards filled with camellias, chrysanthemums, and today cricket cages. It's autumn, and that means one thing inside these pale golden halls: the annual cricket festival has begun. You follow the soft shuffle of embroidered slippers along the corridor. Children of the palace princesses, and their tutors are giggling, whispering, and clutching tiny boxes of their chosen champions. Cricket fighting is the season's favourite entertainment, both a game and, strangely, a subtle metaphor for statecraft. Small battles. One official mutters, "Keep big tempers cool." In the Hall of Little Sounds, a name you couldn't make up if you tried, the Emperor's youngest son is coaxing his sleek black cricket into a polished ceramic arena. Across from him, a tiny girl with a serious frown sets her own speckled fighter down with great ceremony. A eunuch waves a goose-feather brush between them to stir their competitive instincts. You sit with the older courtiers and attendants, sipping fragrant osmanthus tea while watching the gentle clash. The crickets do indeed fight, in a way more posture than pummel. A flick of antennae, a flurry of wings, a moment of triumph. And then the children cheer as the winner is scooped up, praised, and fed a sliver of pear. These insects are not wild, nor ordinary. They are raised in clay jars, fed specially curated diets, kept warm through winter in silk-lined boxes. Some nobles employ cricket keepers who know their creatures' moods better than their own spouses. Tiny harnesses, minute weights, and training regimens, all devoted to creatures smaller than a coin. Later, you visit the palace garden, where cricket songs mingle with the rustle of wind through banana leaves. An elderly Empress Dowager walks slowly with her attendants. She carries a cricket in a gilded cage and claims it once predicted a rainstorm by refusing to sing. "Smarter than some of our ministers," she murmurs, then chuckles softly. Inside the scholar's study, officials discuss matters of state beneath scrolls painted with plum blossoms and birds mid-flight. But even here, on the low lacquer table, sits a cricket cage, its occupant chirping softly. as if contributing to the debate. You ask an advisor whether the practice is considered childish. He smiles. In a noisy world, he says, we listen to small voices. That is song wisdom. Indeed, the song court favours subtlety. Rituals here are elegant, not ostentatious. Decisions are weighed with scholarly restraint. Confucian values infuse daily life, and even the emperor often addresses his ministers with reasoned arguments rather than imperial decree. Insects, poems, chess games. These are not distractions, but expressions of inner clarity. Still, historians continue to ponder, did the song emperors, in their devotion to civility and detail, grow distant from the realities of empire? Did too much refinement invite fracture? Or was it precisely this grace that held the centre, while outer storms brewed as you stroll back through the courtyard? You spot a servant repairing a broken cricket cage. He hums a lullaby as he works, pausing occasionally to let the cage's new bamboo ribs dry. You ask him if he plays favourites. Of course, he says, but don't tell the others. They sulk. That evening, as lanterns are lit and shadows stretch across the halls, you sit in your guest room with your own small cricket companion. It sings softly, a rhythm like distant rain. You find yourself lulled by it, not just the sound, but the thought that in this immense and intricate world, something so small can still command attention, delight, and gentle reverence. You drift asleep with the chirping beside you, and the palace, its silk walls, its scholars and scribes, its quiet cricket battles breathes on in gold and silence. You wake to frost. It clings to the corners of the window lattice, delicate as embroidery. Beyond the glass, the northern wind whistles low, brushing across rooftops capped with snow. The plum blossoms in the courtyard have curled into themselves, waiting patiently for the sun. And you are layered in a borrowed robe, hands cupped around a bowl of warm congee, watching soldiers ride out of the city. This is not the tranquil south of mountain gardens and poetry scrolls. You're in the north now, in the cold, watchful borderlands where the Song Dynasty breathes just a little more carefully. The soldiers wear padded coats and woolen wraps, their boots stained with ice. They are not a fearsome lot, not armoured like those in epic tales, but they carry long spears and solemn expressions. They ride toward the frontier to check on movements from the north. From the Khitan Liao dynasty, the Khitan people, nomadic and sharp-eyed, rule the powerful Liao Empire to the Song's north. And although the two states signed a peace treaty in 1005 known as the Chanyuan Treaty, tensions remain like buried embers beneath the snow. You follow the captain to a small outpost nestled between pine-covered hills. The station is made of stone and timber, warm only near the fire pit, and staffed by half-frozen soldiers and one fastidious clerk who insists on recording every gust of wind and fox sighting in neat, vertical script. You never know, he mutters, when it's not just a fox. From this cold perch, you can see a winding trail vanish into the white horizon. Somewhere out there are Liao scouts, caravans, nomads, maybe even spies, but also peace. The treaty has held for decades. Despite its humiliating terms, song payments of silk and silver to the Liao every year in exchange for non-aggression. Historians argue fiercely over this. Was it weakness, a necessary compromise? Some call it disgraceful, others brilliant. After all, by keeping the peace through diplomacy and payment, the Song preserved its cities, its people, and its flourishing culture while avoiding costly wars. But the pride of the court was bruised, and the threat never disappeared. It merely wore a fur hat and smiled politely. Inside the outpost, you help distribute tea and salted radish to the men. One soldier shows you his hidden talent. He carves tiny horses from pine bark. "My sister sells them in the market," he says proudly. She says they keep away boredom. That evening, word arrives from a nearby patrol. A Liao caravan was spotted heading west, skirting Song territory but coming close. The captain reads the message in silence, then folds it neatly and tucks it into his sleeve. "Close," he murmurs, "but not a threat. Not yet." Back in the city, you visit a schoolhouse where students copy records of the Liaosong Treaty. One child asks, "Why do we pay them?" The teacher hesitates. "So we don't pay with lives," he says softly. "And so we have time to study calligraphy." Later, you hear a travelling storyteller in the marketplace narrate the tale of a song envoy sent north to negotiate with the Khitan. He was offered fermented mare's milk and fur cloaks, and rode a camel for 3 days without falling off. The audience laughs, not at him, but with him, a scholar in a horseman's world. There's something admirable about the song diplomats. They carry books into foreign courts. They wield etiquette instead of threats, and sometimes that works. You return to the outpost one last time before heading south again. The captain gives you a carved pine horse to take with you. "Tell them," he says with a tired smile, "we do more than just sip tea and write poems." You nod, and as you leave the northern snows behind, you carry with you the chill of the wind, the quiet pride of border sentries, and the echo of a peace maintained not by strength, but by strategy. The plum blossoms in the south are still waiting, but they will bloom. You wake to birdsong, but not the natural kind. It's a mechanical chirp, rhythmic and precise, followed by a faint metallic flutter. Your eyes open to a garden unlike any you've seen before. Bronze cranes bow beside carved ponds. Fish leap in arcs from marble basins, and hidden fountains gurgle in perfect harmony with the breeze. Somewhere deeper in the hedges, a phoenix calls, not real, but fashioned from gold and lacquered wood. Its song piped through an ingenious flute of copper and silk. You are standing in the Emperor's mechanical garden. This dreamlike place, nestled within a private palace courtyard, is no ordinary retreat. Here, engineering becomes artistry, and art becomes motion. Bronze lilies open and close with the tilt of the sun. Clockwork lotuses rotate in slow spirals on clear water. A turtle-shaped automaton drifts across the pond, its shell inscribed with lines from the classic of changes. Your guide today is a court artisan named Yuan, a man with the quiet confidence of someone who's been surrounded by gears and brushes since childhood. "This," he says, "is what happens when a dynasty values patience." He shows you the workings of a water-driven puppet. Stage a miniature theatre that performs moral dramas using carved wooden actors. As water flows through hidden channels, strings lift, doors open, and a sage bows to a confused official. You find yourself clapping at the end of the scene. The Song Dynasty is not just a time of printing presses and poetry. It is an age of invention, often unassuming, often beautiful. Hydraulics, gears, air pressure, all employed not to conquer, but to charm. You pass a mechanical bird perched on a flowering branch. Its wings twitch as it whistles a haunting tune. Yuan lifts it gently and reveals the tiny bellows inside. "Su Song started this," he says. referencing the same engineer behind the grand astronomical clock tower. But we've added poetry within a side chamber. You're shown a set of rotating panels that display constellations when lit from behind by a single lantern. A court astrologer enters and realigns a gear with the tip of a jade stylus. "Too much moonlight," she mutters. "The tiger constellation is sulking." There's debate, of course, about the true extent of these wonders. Some scholars believe the most elaborate automata existed more in court records and imagination than in polished bronze. Others argue that the descriptions were literal, and that much of this mechanical ingenuity was lost when the capital fell to invading armies. A few surviving texts from the Song period detail how such devices worked, but the physical evidence is sparse, and mystery wraps around it like ivy. Still, standing here, with petals falling into fountains and dragonflies circling a copper heron, you find no reason to doubt it feels real, or at least real enough to remember. Later, you sit beneath a plum tree, sipping honeyed chrysanthemum tea as a trio of mechanical cicadas click gently nearby. A court lady passes, laughing at their persistence. "They never sleep," she says. "Unlike us." Yuen invites you to help him adjust a dragon automaton meant to breathe vapor during festivals. You polish the brass scales while he checks the timing of its bellows. "It's not for war," he says, "but for wonder." And that might be the Song legacy in miniature. In other empires, engineering serves conquest. Here, it serves curiosity. Here, even a festival prop becomes a miniature cosmos. As evening falls, the garden lights itself. Lanterns flicker to life in sequence. Fountains shift direction, casting light through their spray in soft arcs. The bronze birds settle. Even the clockwork fish glide more slowly. You lie back on a bench of warm stone and watch the stars emerge, reflected dimly in the pond where the turtle drifts, still humming his slow path through shadow. Somewhere, deep in the hedges, the phoenix chirps again, just once, and then all is still. You awaken to the scratch of a brush on silk. In the hush of a scholar's study, dawn creeps slowly across scroll-lined walls. You sit on a worn bamboo mat, surrounded by low shelves stacked with essays and edicts tied in silken twine. A brazier crackles nearby, warming your fingers as you sip tea steeped with dried orange peel. Across from you sits a man with sharp, thoughtful eyes and a forehead smudged with ink. His name is Sima Guang, historian, chancellor, critic, poet, and in recent years, something far more dangerous in a scholar's world, a reform resistor. The Song court, once a haven of polite debates and philosophical refinement, now stirs with tension. The brilliant and reform-minded Wang Anshi has introduced sweeping changes aimed at strengthening the dynasty through state control of trade, military reform, expanded education, and low-interest agricultural loans. Some call it visionary, others call it reckless. Sima Guang. He calls it too much, too fast. He has returned from retirement to write a counterweight, an elegant avalanche of reasoned essays, footnoted protests, and historical parallels. His tools are not swords, but scrolls. He does not raise his voice, he raises his ink brush. You walk with him through a corridor of plum trees, each branch tagged with a proverb or passage from his writings. "We must not destroy the roots," he says quietly. Even if we wish to build a taller tree, inside his study, he shows you his life's great project, the Ziji Tongjian, a chronological history of China, spanning over a millennium, designed to offer moral guidance for emperors, not just dates and names, but cautionary tales in flowing prose. If the ruler reads, he murmurs, perhaps he will see. The emperor, unfortunately, sees many things and listens to many voices. Factions form, tensions rise. Officials whisper behind their fans. One calls the court a poetry salon with knives beneath the cushions. You attend a meeting of court scholars, half praising Wang Anshi's new policies as a renaissance of state power, half warning of their unintended consequences. One cites Sima Guang's own text as a warning. Another laughs and says, "History is not a prophecy." A scribe in the corner records the debate with the flat expression of someone who's heard this all before. Outside the court, the people live somewhere in the middle. A farmer receives a low-interest loan and thanks the heavens. A merchant, fined for breaking a new trade regulation, curses the bureaucracy. A boy reads a subsidized textbook by candlelight. A teacher tears his hair out over its inaccuracies. You visit a bookshop where 2 editions of Confucius are being sold, one annotated by Wang Anshi, the other by his opponents. The seller shrugs. "I sell both." He says, "One is truth. The other is truth with footnotes." Historians still debate the new policies. Some call Wang Anshi a misunderstood genius, ahead of his time. Others view Sima Guang as the principled voice of caution in a moment of dangerous haste. Most agree the split weakened the court, the Song Dynasty, once defined by calm, now trembled beneath its own civil brilliance, and yet neither side shouts. You attend a funeral for a mid-level official, a man who supported the reforms but admired Sima Guang's writing. His sons recite poems in his honour. One places a scroll of the Ziji Tongjian beside the casket. "For balance," he says. Later that night, Sima Guang walks alone beneath the moon, trailing his fingers across a carved stone stele. "Sometimes," he says softly, "wisdom is not knowing the answer, but knowing where to write the question." You sit beside him in silence. The court will go on debating. The scrolls will keep arriving. The empire will keep shifting beneath its own weight. But tonight, there is only the sound of ink drying, of tea being poured, and of a man who tried quietly, completely, to steady a dynasty with the power of prose. You wake to the sound of boots in water, not rain, not river, but the slow, steady rhythm of people moving through the mud of a city undone. Kaifeng glorious sprawling, poetic. Kaifeng is no longer the gleaming capital of scrolls and spring lanterns. It is a city in retreat. You rise beneath a makeshift shelter of reed mats and silk robes repurposed as walls. Around you, servants, scholars, and soldiers prepare to flee. Their faces are pale with disbelief. Yesterday, the Song ruled the north. Today, it belongs to the Yurchin Jin. The fall came not suddenly, but with unbearable weight. The urchins arise in force from the northeast first, allied with the Song against their shared rivals, the Khitan Liao. But alliances among empires are delicate. And soon, very soon, the Jin turned southward, swiftly, sharply, like a blade drawn from a scabbard of ice. You walk through the broken streets of Kaifeng. Walls are scorched, marketplaces empty, bridges collapsed. The golden-tiled palaces where emperors once sipped ginger tea now echo with wind and rumour. Looters pass in silence, eyes darting, hands quick. Officials burn documents by the armful edicts, poetry, family registers, anything that might be used or misunderstood. You join a slow procession headed toward the southern gate. Oxen groan under the weight of lacquered trunks. Children clutch crickets in bird cages. Elderly women carry scrolls wrapped in cloth. One boy pulls a small wooden turtle on a string, unaware of the chaos around him. At the heart of the flight, Emperor Qinzong and his father, the retired Emperor Huizong, a man better known for his paintings of birds and flowers than for battlefield strategy. Now both are fugitives in their own realm. The tragedy strikes deeper than defeat. It strikes the bone of Song identity. This is a dynasty of letters, not swords, of balance, not brutality. And now, that balance has been tipped violently. The event will become known as the Jinkang Incident, a name carved in sorrow. The Jin sack the city, seize the palace, and capture over 3,000 members of the imperial family and court. The emperors themselves are taken north in chains, along with treasured calligraphy, paintings, and relics. Some say the Jin mocked them by making Huizong write poems for their court. Others say he stopped speaking altogether. Historians still argue over who failed most. Was it the weakness of the Song military, the court's refusal to heed northern warnings, the tragic indecision of Qinzong, who dismissed loyal generals and trusted flatterers until it was too late? Or was it simply the force of history, the empire too refined to resist its own unravelling? No one agrees, and no one sleeps. You arrive at the bank of the Huai River. Across the water, the remnants of the court gather beneath silk canopies and lanterns that flicker like the last hope of a dying star. Plans are whispered a new capital further south, a dynasty reborn in exile. A young official beside you mutters bitterly, "We spent 100 years perfecting poetry. The Jin spent 10 sharpening blades." You want to disagree, but your mouth stays closed. And yet even in this moment of fracture life flickers on. A woman offers you a cup of hot rice porridge from a street cauldron. A child begins to recite a Tang poem to calm her crying sister. A cart passes by filled not with gold, but with brushes, inkstones, and books. These are not things to flee with, you think. These are things to build with. You spend the night beside a dwindling fire, the stars overhead blurred by smoke. The north is lost. Kaifeng lies silent behind you, but ahead, across the river, the Song Dynasty exhales and prepares to become something else. Not finished, just moved. You awaken to the sound of water, not the crashing of waves or the chaos of a flood, but the steady, rhythmic lap of oars. You are on a boat now, gliding silently down a canal laced with willows, their long branches trailing like ribbons across the surface. The air smells of damp wood, plum blossoms, and ink. You've arrived in Linnan, once a provincial town, now the new capital of the southern Song Dynasty. After the fall of Kaifeng, the court has fled south and settled here, beside the mouth of the Qiantang River. It is quieter, softer, veiled in river mist and humility. But it is no less alive. You dock beside a cobbled quay and step into a city reborn. Gone are the grand drum towers and vast ceremonial halls of the north, in their place winding canals, arched stone bridges, pavilions that lean gently into the water. Linnan is not built to impress. It is built to endure. The architecture hugs the land like a well-wrapped robe. You pass scribes carrying bundled scrolls up narrow steps. They bow politely, their expressions thoughtful but not defeated. A scholar with greying hair murmurs to a student, "We've lost the throne, but not the ink." Here, the Song court is rebuilding, not in marble and gold, but in policy, poetry, and persistence. Inside a modest palace compound, Emperor Gaozong, the 9th son of Emperor Huizong, now rules. He escaped the northern calamity and has taken the burden of restoration upon himself. He is cautious, steady, and shrewd a ruler shaped by survival rather than inheritance. You watch him from a distance in a bamboo hall, seated with advisors who speak in careful tones. They discuss trade, the military, diplomacy with the Jin. Gaozong listens more than he speaks. He does not call for vengeance. He calls for stability, and the city around him blooms. You stroll along the canal at midday and pass merchants unloading silks and ceramics from riverboats. A young girl plays the guqin beneath a terrace. A boatman sings a slow tune about drifting far from home. The song feels like it belongs to everyone. Art, too, is adapting. Painters depict smaller, quieter scenes, herons on a rice paddy, mist over tea fields. A poet you meet at a tea stall writes only in lowercase. Figuratively speaking, the world is humbler now, he explains. Linen's markets brim with innovation, smaller presses, local textiles, glass from maritime trade, fresh ink colours. The southern economy flourishes. Tax records show rice yields climbing, artisans multiplying, silver flowing in from overseas trade routes. Yet the court never forgets. A shrine in the city's western quarter honours the captives taken by the Jin. Inside, offerings are left daily poems written on fans, ink stones wrapped in silk, even a carved wooden cricket cage. The incense never stops burning. The sorrow never fully lifts. Still, life continues. You attend a night festival along the Grand Canal, where lanterns float gently on the water, each one bearing a verse, a wish, or a name. One says, "Let us write peace where we cannot write return." The canal itself is now the empire's artery carrying goods, soldiers, messengers, and hope. You ride its length with a bureaucrat who maps villages and notes flood levels with meditative calm. The north is memory, he says. The south is decision. Historians will later debate whether the southern song was truly a continuation of the dynasty or a second act altogether. Was it resilient or resigned? A golden age of culture or a twilight of slow decline? But here, walking along moonlit bridges, the question feels too sharp for the answer. What you see is endurance, not grand, not loud, but deeply rooted. As you return to your guest house, you pass a wall where someone has painted a single line of poetry. We do not rebuild the palace. We plant willows where it fell, and the willows, it seems, are thriving. You wake to the scent of sulphur. It's faint, almost hidden beneath the morning mist and the sharper tang of damp pine, but it lingers in the air like a warning or a promise. You sit up on a grassy hillside overlooking a quiet encampment. Men in padded uniforms are arranging barrels beside stacks of stones, while others unroll silk maps over bamboo tables. You're in a southern Song military camp, and today the engineers are at work. Gone are the cavalry charges and open field battles of dynasties past. The southern Song military must be inventive lighter, faster, smarter, forced to abandon the north. It now defends a narrow stretch of land with river systems, mountains, and machines. The scent you smell is from Huoyao fire medicine, gunpowder. The formula has been known for some time, used in Taoist alchemy, fireworks, and rudimentary fire arrows. But now, under pressure from persistent Jin raids and coastal piracy, the Song begin to weaponize it in earnest. and what you see today is an early catapult crew preparing to launch what looks like a clay jar, sealed with wax and inscribed with two characters, Thunderfire. An officer nods. Explosive charge, not too close. You take his advice. The catapult arm swings. The jar arcs through the pale sky, trailing a ribbon of smoke before bursting against a stone wall in a dull, thumping roar. The soldiers cheer politely. It works. Mostly. One engineer writes notes on a scrap of silk, shaking his head. Needs more saltpeter, he mutters. Not far from the testing grounds, a separate team calibrates a new version of the repeating crossbow. Another tests a fire lance, a spear-like weapon with a small charge that spits flame at close range. They're not elegant, these machines, but they're clever and increasingly necessary. You accompany a supply officer down the river toward a Song naval base. Southern Song ships are sleek, fast, and often equipped with trebuchets. Some carry crates of the new gunpowder bombs, small but terrifying. Others rely on an older genius, the magnetic compass. You sit with the navigator in a tiny cabin hung with talismans. He holds lacquered case containing a floating needle, always pointing south. North is where they came from, he says quietly. South is where we choose. It's poetic but practical. These ships patrol the coast, escorting merchant fleets and warding off pirates who harass Song trade routes. The navy, once modest, has become essential. A silent guardian of an empire hemmed in by land and opened by sea. You return to the city and visit a workshop near Linen, where craftsmen produce parts for these innovations, bronze fittings, reed tubes, jars of saltpeter stored beside sacks of charcoal. It smells like earth and something sharper. A young boy offers to show you his dragon tube, a fire lance prototype made from bamboo. It works on cats, he says. You kindly decline the demonstration. Even scholars now debate the place of violence in a refined society. Some argue that the embrace of gunpowder betrays the Song ideal, that elegance has given way to desperation. Others say invention is its own form of virtue intelligence made manifest. What cannot be debated is this: the Song have begun a transformation. They were once a people of scrolls and gardens. Now, they are also a people of flame and precision gears. You end your day in a quiet part of the camp, where a soldier is writing a letter home. His brushwork is shaky but sincere. The smoke today looked like a phoenix. He writes, "Tell the mother I still remember how to grind ink." As dusk falls, the test field is quiet again. A few broken jars lie scattered in the grass. One still smokes faintly, its edges glowing like coal. And in the distance, a bird reel this time calls from a treetop, unaware of the powder that hums beneath the empire's surface. You awaken on the water. The wooden boat rocks gently beneath you, the silk canopy fluttering like the sleeve of a dreaming poet. Above, the sky is soft grey, brushed faintly with pink, and the canal stretches ahead like a painted scroll slowly unfurling. A musician plucks a lute on the far end of the deck, her notes dissolving into the mist. You're aboard a pleasure boat on the West Lake near Hangzhou. This is not a courtship or a merchant junk. This is a floating retreat, a drifting daydream, and it carries artists, scholars, courtesans, and calligraphers, all bound not for battle or business, but for beauty. The southern Song capital of Linen has grown into a city of refinement, though the empire has shrunk. The soul of its people has deepened. Art, music, and melancholy flourish in equal measure. You recline beneath patterned curtains while sipping cold chrysanthemum wine, listening to a poet recite verses about the moon, loss, and longing for the north. He wears his sorrow elegantly. Around you, the lake is alive with reflection, actual and emotional. Small boats trail incense smoke behind them. Some carry newlyweds releasing paper lanterns. Others hold aging painters sketching waterfowl in single, perfect brush strokes. From the shore, the pagodas and tea pavilions watch in silence. You disembark briefly to walk through a garden pavilion built on stilts above the lake. There, an older woman in peacock blue robes invites you to sample tea brewed with snowmelt and aged lotus root. It tastes like memory, slightly sweet, slightly bitter, impossible to describe without poetry. In one of the pavilion's chambers, musicians rehearse for a moon viewing party. The guqin hums like a distant thundercloud, while a flute traces a melody so fragile it might vanish between breaths. One song is titled, "The Reflection Leaves First." You don't need it explained. Southern song culture has become introspective. The north is gone. The threat of the djinn looms ever near, and yet life continues not in denial, but in delicate defiance. Artists paint mist. Writers compose elegies for places they've never seen. Calligraphy flows like weeping willow branches. The painter Mei Yuan, a favourite of the court, creates asymmetrical landscapes with a single tree, a sliver of mountain, and a man in silence. He once said, "What is not painted is as important as what is." That idea has become a national mood. You sit beside a courtier who tells you stories of Empress Yang, who commissioned paintings of chrysanthemums every year, not for decoration, but for their resilience. "They bloom in cold," she once said. So we must remember how to do the same. Later, you rejoin your boat, now drifting back toward the city. A young singer stands at the prow, her voice trailing behind like ribbon on wind. She sings of a lover lost across the river. Or perhaps it's a metaphor. Or perhaps it doesn't matter. Historians later refer to this period as one of refined sorrow. Was it too gentle for its own good, too steeped in art to withstand another storm, or was it something nobler, a civilization choosing grace even as the sky dimmed? Scholars disagree, as scholars always do. Some find tragedy in it, others quiet triumph. The boat eases into dock just as the moon lifts above the treetops. You disembark, barefoot now, and walk a stone path that glistens with lake mist. A boy lights a lantern with a line of verse written on its side. The past is heavy, but the boat is light. You watch it float away into the night, its glow swaying gently across the water's surface like a final sigh. And somewhere beyond the reeds, a heron takes flight, without hurry, without sound. You awaken to the sound of drums, not the playful thump of festival parades, nor the ceremonial rhythm of palace rituals, but the steady, sobering beat of war. It is 1279, and the southern song is facing its final hour. You rise aboard a ship, not a gentle riverboat this time, but a war junket's deck crowded with armour, flame pots, and the grim determination of those who know they're nearly out of time. This is the Battle of Yamen. The Mongols have come. After decades of campaigns under the Yuan dynasty, led by the descendants of Genghis Khan, they have swept through China like wind through dry grass. One by one, song cities have fallen, resistance remains only here, in the southern waters off modern-day Guangdong. You stand with a small imperial court in exile. The emperor is a child Zhao Bing, just 7 years old, his robes too large, his crown a burden he never asked to wear. He's carried by loyal officials who murmur reassurances he does not understand. One of them, Lu Xiufu, clutches the boy's hand with a quiet resolve that seems to harden the air. Around you, the sea is filled with ships. The Song Navy, though brave, is outnumbered and surrounded. Mongol vessels block every escape. Fire arrows light the morning haze. The water churns with smoke and oars, and the cries of sailors reciting their final verses aloud. But even now, the court remains composed. A general writes one last letter home, sealing it with wax and a pressed sprig of plum blossom. A scholar reads aloud from the Book of Rites, his voice shaking only slightly. A tea master, remarkably, brews a final pot below deck. If this is the end, he says softly, then let it end with flavour. You join a circle of young scribes who are copying out a list of names fallen ministers, lost cities, forgotten poems. Someone must remember, one says, even if there's no one left to read. And then, battle. You witness smoke thickening the sky, sails torn by flame, the crash of ship against ship. The Song fight with desperation, ingenuity, and impossible courage. Fire lances are launched, arrows rain, ships are set alight to block Mongol advance, but it is not enough. The Mongols press forward. One by one, the Song ships are overwhelmed. The sea itself becomes a tapestry of fire and foam, and in the final moments, you stand aboard the last surviving vessel, where Lu Xiufu kneels before the boy emperor. He whispers something, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a promise, and then steps forward. In his arms, the last son of heaven, they leap into the sea. It is said they disappeared beneath the waves without a sound. And with them, the Song Dynasty. Silence returns. The sea rolls on. A page floats past its ink-smeared, its characters still faintly legible. A lotus petal clings to the water's surface. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Yuan banners rise. China has entered a new era, but you do not leave with sorrow. You carry the song not as a fall, but as a song of scholars who wrote by lantern light, of inventors who shaped the stars, of courtiers who listened to crickets, of artists who painted silence. They endured through gardens, not conquests, through ideas, not invasions. And though their dynasty has ended, their spirit lingers in calligraphy, in porcelain, in the hush of ink across vellum. You sit now on the shore. The last flames have gone out. The tide returns, and the song, like a faint melody at the edge of sleep, remains. Now, dear listener, you are far from the battles, the cities, the misty lakes, and the riverboats. You're safe beneath your blanket, surrounded by the hush of your room and the comfort of stillness. The Song Dynasty has faded gently from view, like calligraphy dissolving in rain. And you, faithful traveller through time, have made it to the end of their story. A story not of conquests or crowns alone, but of slow, thoughtful wonders. You walked among pagodas and pine pavilions. You brewed tea with poets, mapped streets with cartographers, and sailed with merchants towards sunlit harbours. You heard the scratch of ink, the whisper of scrolls, the quiet elegance of a people who prized thought over might. The song gave us art that breathes, machines that tick in rhythm with stars, and philosophies that ask more than they answer. And now, their memory drifts quietly in your mind, like a paper lantern floating down a moonlit canal. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts settle like mist on a lake. Let the echoes of scholar officials and gentle painters fold into sleep. You are home, you're safe, and you're still drifting, not through history anymore, but through dreams. Sleep well.